In the last two episodes, we heard from Laurent the legend from Just Catamarans about the aftermarket fit-out and Bob Ross about the quality behind the Leopard cats. This week, JTHalden, the Watermaker expert, gives us all the essential facts that every cruiser with a Watermaker on board needs to know.
Well, I consider these the Cadillac of Watermakers. Alright, that doesn't make them a BMW or Mercedes, but then I think everybody else may be building Chevettes and AMC Pacers, but that's my personal opinion. There's no such thing as a perfect piece of equipment on a boat. Anybody tells you they're never going to give you fits, anything is not telling you the truth. No less different than this. What a lot of Watermakers require is attention. You know, if we have it, we pay good, decent attention, and that's part of what we're going to go over today. You know, how to maintain it and service it. It'll serve you well. And again, like I said, we do understand that these can have issues. They're in a very hostile environment, but we have designed and built and engineered this around where it's easy for the owner to work on it. Because we understand it's never going to break down in my backyard. It's always going to break down when you're out there on your own.
Yeah, that's right.
And as you'll see, and I'll explain when we're changing this membrane out, this is a very, very simple membrane change out. Getting to it, just a few, nuts and bolts and stuff like that. But it's a piece of cake to change this out. We'll do everything right here. Okay. It's pretty hard to hurt this piece of equipment. This is the accumulator tank. And all the purpose of this is in this pump, it's got two cylinders.
Yeah.
And when it shifts back and forth, cylinders go back like that. When it hits and stops and reverses, it creates a bit of a plumbing hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just to soften that blow. But I need to get that to get to this bracket right here. So these two brackets will come off, and then the membrane vessel will drop right off. Here's where we're starting to get a little bit wet here.
So that's just, you push the gray button in to pull that out?
Right, that's a quick disconnect. This is your brine discharge. This is where after the water's gone through the system, you've got a concentrated salt water, this is where it goes out overboard.
Okay.
The reason there's a quick disconnect fitting here is if you go to pickle the system, there are going to be two hoses, hopefully somewhere in here, that are pickling hoses, and one will snap to this quick disconnect fitting. It's just a 3-foot piece of hose. There's nothing on the under end, but it's open.
Oh, it's up
and
there.
There's another quick disconnect fitting right here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's your pickup. And you take that apart, put the other hose on there, and you would, just like the 5-gallon bucket sits right there, we would put our pickling solution in there, put the two hoses in there, and then we just start the system, and she'll draw the pickling solution up through that hose, circulate it throughout the entire system until it comes right back out in the bucket. We just let it circulate like that for about 20 minutes or so. Fancy pickling kit. You notice you've got two quick disconnect fittings. That's the male side, just like it's on here. And that's one snaps into each one.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and this is your pickling solution. You've got one time use. You get one in here. This is what we call our SC1.
Okay.
That is our storage solution. Okay. If you're going to use a powdered solution to store this Watermaker, you absolutely must use that. Do not use anything else. Okay. Every other Watermaker company uses what's called sodium metabisulfite to pickle their membrane. We put this in sodium metabisulfite in this system. It will pickle the membrane just fine, but it will destroy this pump and the warranty that comes with it. Okay, so don't do it. And this is like $25 a piece. It's a one-time use. Sodium metabisulfite. I'm a sailor, so I can say it. Sailors are cheap. They get a 5-gallon bucket like that for about $50, and they all chip in at the bar $3-4, and everybody's got a lifetime until they put it in a Spectra. Then it's $4,000 worth of repairs. Okay, so don't do it.
And how do we get spares of that?
Everything you need is going to come through me. I'm a full service partner distributor. I will have everything you need for this system. This just like this Watermaker. We can sell the Watermaker, we can fix them, we get parts, you name it, and service them. What I would prefer you to use even over that, and this is the other thing, is propylene glycol.
Oh yeah.
You use
antifreeze, isn't it?
Exactly, it's an antifreeze. The propylene, not the ethylene, but the propylene. And it's going to pickle the system. I prefer it for this reason. This is good for an emergency, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
This is what we always used to come out with. But it's good for 6 months only. And you mix that with unchlorinated water. And water is a bit corrosive itself. So if it's good for 6 months, if we put propylene glycol in here.
the powder is only good for 6 months.
Right, correct. It's a good, and after 6 months, after you pickle it with that, you've got to flush it and repickle
Oh, I
it
see
again.
what you mean. Not the powder in the.
No. There's pretty much no shelf life on it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's once it's mixed up in the system. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's good for 6 months. You got to flush the system, redo it all over again. Whereas you put propylene glycol in here, it'd be good for a couple of years.
Oh, right. Okay.
But even that's not the reason I like the propylene glycol. It used to be back in the day when we first started, these membranes were $1,500, $2,000 a piece. Everybody was worried about the membranes. Well, now membranes are a lot lower, far 1,000% cheaper than that.
How much are they?
They're probably about anywhere from about $300 to $350 right now.
And you said the 5 to 8 years of life.
Okay, 5 to 6 years, 5 to 8 years, 5 to 6 years, something like that. Yeah.
Anything wrong?
Yeah, it depends. It's like anything. So, anyways, kind of going back to that propylene glycol, and this is all part of the orientation. The reason I like to use that, again, is I'm not even worried about the membranes anymore. I'm more worried about this pump than the feed pump that's in there. And propylene glycol, if you've ever felt it, it feels like soapy dishwater. So it's soapy, and it keeps everything in here nice and supple.
Yeah.
The pump head in here, it's about $1,000 stainless steel pump head. And it's got carbon blades in there, and that propylene glycol just stops anything from it. Remember, if it's carbon blade, it's just sitting in water with this, and this obviously solution. So it can tend to rust out if you go for a year or so. It could actually rust out the pump head and freeze it.
Right? Okay.
Propylene glycol doesn't do it. In the Clark pump, we've got a lot of things that go back and forth, a lot of O-rings and seals, all not kept nice and supple. I've unpickled Watermakers that were stored in propylene glycol for 5 years and fired right up and was perfectly fine.
Wow.
That's why I like it. I'm careless at this point about the membrane. That nice and tight. Pop this one off. This has got to let it drain for a minute so we don't have too much. They're a little tricky to get back on, but it's once you get it, it's a piece of cake.
Tricky to
It can be tricky, exactly. That's what it is, catching those, putting them back in. But it's not too bad.
Just go straight out.
Straight out like that. And it is specific of what side we change. We're going to change the membrane from this end because there's a direction to the flow. It's hard to tell, but there's a stainless steel tube over here and a stainless steel tube. This stainless steel tube is coming out of the bottom of this pump. That's the flow of the water, the pressure of the salt water. Goes through here, then goes through the membrane, then comes back into this tube in this direction. So we have to do this side because that's where the brine seal on the membrane itself lives. Here's the fun part about a Spectra. Like I say, most Watermaker companies have end caps. You've got clamps, you've got bolts, all kinds of stuff. Not a Spectra. This is brand new. Look at that with my hand. I just took it off. You kind of unscrew it a little bit like that. Take your little screwdriver, just wedge it between this nut right here.
Yeah.
Just kind of a little bounce like that, and it'll keep unscrewing until it comes off.
Oh, okay.
Piece of cake. Like I said, this is the way all membrane vessels should operate. Yeah, you can just see the black enough. That's the membrane. You can kind of even smell it a little bit.
Yeah.
And through those holes is the actual membrane itself.
Yeah.
And you see how black and dirty it is.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And there's an inside. Obviously, it is an orientated.
It is.
So you
The membrane itself doesn't care what direction it's in. If you notice on this end, looks like it's an O-ring, but there's not one at that end. What we do is put just a little bit of silicone grease, water-based silicone grease, on this product tube and a little bit just on the brine sealing. We just shine it. We don't load it. Don't load it up. So now it just goes right back in, same way we came out.
So the other end doesn't need silicone?
It's already on this one.
Oh, okay.
It goes right in there. So it just drops right in there.
Okay, so you feel it.
You're back in business.
Seal.
Change that. Remember, it's fairly straightforward.
First
time you do it, it'll take a while, but afterwards, she's, oh yeah, I remember. Anyways,
Yeah.
I just pop that, get that seal to sit in there good. Leave that loose just for right now because I'll need to turn it.
There's an upside and a downside.
Yes, there is.
So they've got to face inwards.
Well, it's not critical. They will go the other way, but since this one's got the threads on it for the accumulator tank, you got to kind of go that way.
Yeah.
They're pretty loose. Unfortunately, once you know.
These are the fun. They can be a little quirky to get on.
Because the pipe's already stiff, you mean?
Yeah, it sometimes doesn't quite line up like it should. There we go. Got to get that right in on top of it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. Just a tight spot to get into right up against the wall. If this system leaks, okay, what we don't do is just start tightening things down to leak, especially anything metallic that touches anything black like this. Okay, if this leaks anywhere here, let me know. What would be nice is if you could take a picture and say, JT, it's leaking from here, from here, or here, I'll tell you how to fix it.
Okay.
This is plastic, okay? This whole pump is plastic. There's a lot of metal parts threaded into it. Now, the external parts are metal, like you see the stainless steel tubing. That's easy without having to break into the system just to replace that after a while, because stainless steel will even pit and start getting holes in it and stuff like that. But yeah, if it leaks, unless it's a hose clamp or something like a hose clamp like this, it's easy to grab it, you know, tighten it down. But anything that goes in, metal parts into here, these are all going into plastic parts. It's either O-ring or a Teflon tape. We have to take it apart and reassemble it with the proper O-ring or Teflon tape. Just don't say, oh, it's leaking there, and you'll be out of Watermaker until we replace that end cap you just busted. All right, and don't hesitate. This is part of what you're getting with this Watermaker from me. Is my phone number right there. Don't hesitate to call me. Okay, and you will, I promise. And you see I'm using 2 wrenches. Holding that one, it goes in the plastic fitting. This is your product tube. This is where the fresh water comes out of the membranes. Good business. This is your pressure relief valve.
Oh, I see. So
if you
to
close
get the air out of it.
Well, no, this is what creates the pressures inside the Watermaker's membrane. We need 800 pounds of pressure within the membrane vessel to start the RO process. Okay? And how we achieve that 800 pounds is a lot different than everybody else. It just makes us so energy efficient. Most all other Watermaker companies, what they'll do is they build a feed pump with a high pressure plunger pump. I've seen sidewalk pressure cleaners and the guys using, those are great pumps. They work really well. They'll create the 800 pounds, they'll create 6,000 pounds. The issue with those things are, even though they're good pumps, is the electrical motor it takes to crank that pump. Very big, large electrical motor. That's where all your amps disappear. So what we do entirely different with Spectra, instead of putting a feed pump in there, it just creates this massive 800 pounds of pressure. We got 3 pumps in this system. One pump is down below, right by your through hole. Intake through hole. It's our boost pump. It's a little small boost pump. It takes microamp hours to operate. You won't even hear it running. You got to put your hand on it to make sure it's running. Okay. That feeds a positive pressure up into this pump. This is our second pump. It's our feed pump. It's what we call our feed pump module. That white box. Inside there is the motor and electrical motor and pump. It's going to start creating the pressures, and that's going to take maybe about 10 to 13 pounds of pressure from the boost pump. It's going to take that pressure, and on a 400, it's going to boost it anywhere from about 80 to 120 pounds of pressure. So instead of creating 800 pounds of pressure, like I say, let's just use 100 pounds, it's an average. So we're feeding this about 100 pounds of pressure from the feed pump, not 800 pounds. So since this only needs to generate roughly around that kind of pressure, we don't need as much of a pump and we don't need as much of an electrical motor. So we're saving a ton of energy right off the bat by using a smaller pump and motor. We feed that 100 pounds of pressure to the Clark pump, and this is a hydraulic intensification energy recovery unit. This basically operates on authorities of hydraulics if you can't compress a liquid. Okay, kind of like when you put your thumb over the end of a garden hose, and the harder you squeeze it, the higher the pressure is given. The same amount of water comes out, it just comes out a lot faster. So it's basically a squeezing the pressure. So it's going to bump the pressures up to about 650 pounds of pressure directly. And it's nothing, there's no electrical moving parts in this. It's only driven by the hydraulic pressure created by here. So there's no electrical use here. So it's going to bump that pressure up about 650 pounds. It's going to send it all of that right to the end of the membrane, where the brine seal side is, passing that through there. And at that point, where all other Watermaker companies that are doing everything by brute force, they dump the concentrated brine overboard right after that. Okay, well, we realize that's still under a lot of pressure. So before we dump it overboard, we bring it back in with this stainless steel tube, back into the pump, reuse that pressure. That's where the term energy recovery comes from. That extra pressure builds us up to around 800 pounds of pressure. This is a self-adjusting pump. You never need to touch it. You can try it. All other Watermaker companies have electronic controls to adjust pressures internally, or you got to get down there with needle valves and pressure gauges and do this. Especially if you go from saltier water to fresh, you can do damage to the membrane because of the pressure differentials. But this Clark pump, self-adjusts mechanically. You don't have to do any adjustments whatsoever. Saltiest water in the world is right off here in the Gulf Stream, straight into our Lake Okeechobee, which is our freshwater lake. Never touch it. As the water gets fresher, the production will go up and the pressures will go down. Saltier the water, the higher the pressures, the lower the production. That's just the nature of the beast. This is rated between 15 and 16 gallons an hour, this particular Watermaker. So we're going to find out if it's doing it. So this, all back to what your question was, is this is the pressure relief valve. This valve is just basically an open and closed valve. It is not a needle valve like I'm adjusting pressures. So if I open it like that, that 800 pounds of pressure just drops right off. So now when I'm running the system, she'll create that 800 pounds of pressure, start the RO process. Once it starts making water, okay, it's about a 10-to-1 ratio, okay, for easy math. So for every gallon of fresh water it makes, it takes 10 gallons of salt water to do it. 1 gallon going to your tank, the other 9 going overboard as a concentrated brine. That's, like I was saying, this is your you notice this is your 9 gallons going overboard, this is your 1 gallon going to your tank. So you can see the difference in those sizes.
Those sizes,
Okay? That 9 gallons is important because what it does is it flushes the surface of the membrane constantly. That's what keeps it clean. It'll say in the manual they want you to run this Watermaker a minimum of 1 hour each time you operate it, on average. Not testing purposes and stuff like that, but for an average. Make it 2 hours, using my rules. Okay, there's going to be a couple things I'm going to say differently and where I'm on film, and if Spectra sees this, I'll tell them, hey boys, you know me, we're going to do it my way. Alright, so it's 2 years, or I mean 2 hours, excuse me. It just, like I say, it's just the nature of the membranes. It just keeps them much, much cleaner. I find Watermakers that are used more often last longer. So when you do run it, minimum of 2 hours. And chances are that's the way you're going to operate it most of the time anyways. Just get right into it. This boat carries, what, about 200 gallons of water, I believe. We got 2 100-gallon tanks. You sell catamarans before?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a catamaran sailor too for years. Weight sensitive.
Yeah.
All right, 200 gallons is literally almost a ton of water.
Yeah.
So when you go cruising, now if you're going to go like island hop in the Bahamas, I mean, you just jumping place to place, access to water is everywhere. So what I would suggest you do, take a lot of weight off. Instead of carrying 200 gallons of water, maybe get us an arbitrary number, say keep 80 gallons of water. So you take off 120 gallons, you take off 8 times a gallon of water, so you're talking 1,000 pounds away, half a ton.
Yeah.
So then when you got 80 gallons in there, when you use up 30 or 40 gallons of water, then you start the Watermaker and replenish that number. Like I said, 80 gallons is arbitrary. You may find 100, you may find 60 is a number that fits you well. That way, better sailing performance, fuel economy, the whole 9 yards. Now, if we're crossing an ocean, or something long distance hauls like that where we know we're going to be out of access to water, then we make sure your tank's completely topped off. Then you put half a dozen or a dozen of the blue jugs up on all your lifelines if you're going to go around the world or something. Then as you use up 20 or 30 gallons, constantly tap that off, because if the Watermaker fails and you can't fix it, you know, while you're out there. Now you've got, you know, you're halfway across, but you got all the water you need, and you're on rations, you get comfortably back to where you're at. So never trust any piece of equipment to get you across an ocean. Always plan ahead that way. Right? Okay, so basically you've got all 3 pumps. Okay, once the system's running, we program to run, let's say for example, for 4 hours. Okay, we'll do that from the control panel up front. You'll run it for 4 hours, and then you can go fishing and do whatever you want after that. At the end of the 4 hours, for example, it's going to stop, and it's going to automatically freshwater flush itself. Okay, when it's done with that freshwater flush, it takes about 5 minutes to do it. Okay, she's going to go in a 120-hour, basically 5-day countdown. If you don't wake water in that 5-day period, that countdown will go to 0, and then she'll flush herself again, go right back into another 5-day countdown, and it'll just do that indefinitely. If you're going to leave it for 2-3 months at a time unused, then we'll talk about storing it back with that propylene glycol.
Yeah.
Back to that propylene glycol, one thing, since you're going to go some long distances, I would take some with you. I take probably about 6 gallons of it with me. It gives you 3 good pickles. Take this one, that's good in case you just have to rush home real quick for a couple weeks. But if you get that stuff, I want you to get a gas can. The bottles are biodegradable.
Oh, okay.
Transfer it into a gas can. Our propylene glycol for Watermaker. When the system flushes, if you notice down here, we have a charcoal filter right here. Okay. This side is tied into your house pressure system.
Yep.
Okay, for fresh water. When it calls for that freshwater flush, this is where it's getting the water to flush it from your freshwater tanks. It's got to pass through this charcoal filter first. This charcoal filter's sole purpose is to take any residual chlorine out of water that's in there. And you get residual chlorine by adding dock water to your tanks. Okay, now, with the Watermaker, you can't start adding Clorox to your tanks. If something goes bad, if they go sour or something, we've got to get in there and clean them out. Okay, because if you just start adding Clorox for preventative measures, you'll overpower this charcoal filter and you will burn the membrane and we'll be replacing it. Okay, so maintenance, water tank maintenance is just a little bit different with a Watermaker. Nice thing I love about the Leopards is the tanks they got in here, those blue water tanks. Drain them, unstrap them on 1 bolt, man, you pick the whole thing up in 1 hand right out of there, take it to the dock, hose it all out, really clean it super good. Like I said, there's 2 things that'll kill the membrane that we concern ourselves is oil and chlorine. Oil, I rarely if ever see an issue with oil, especially here on the East Coast, I never see it.
You mean sucking oil in from the
oil,
water?
Right. Most of it's floating on the surface anyways, you're through holes deep.
Yeah.
Where we get oil in a very rare occasion is when people try to make water near big, heavy industrial ports like Port of Miami, where they've got cruise ships, freighters, and stuff. Where big, massive ships in there. There, your 2 filters, your 5 and 20 micron filter. As that boost pump below there, and we'll show that to you, is running. This dark hose with the corrugated that's coming all the way around. That's coming from the output of your boost pump. It's coming up to your first 20 micron filter. This is salt water. Yeah. Goes over, filters it down to a 5 micron filter. Okay. Yeah. And the filters themselves, here's the filters. Other than my name being on it, doesn't have any markings as far as numbers, which one's 5 and which one's 20. So they're color coded.
Oh, right? Okay.
White is 5 and blue is 20. And you can see right on the top, we got these 2 stickers. 5 micron sticker. It says 5 micron and it's white. Okay. 20 micron blue, so you don't mix them up.
Okay, good.
Okay, I mean, you mix them up, you throw the sensors off a little bit, she'd probably shut down the service pre-filters. Okay, so anyways, so that's coming up from the boost pump to your first 20 to your 5. This is all salt water. Comes into this manifold. Once it comes into that manifold, it goes to the feed pump. Okay, and then it goes to the output. But before it does that, when it starts making, it's going to feed it out here. It's filtered through all that. Comes into the input of our Clark pump. Once it starts making water, this water is now fed all the way back to this manifold again. This is before it goes to your tank. So at that point, it's going to measure how much water is being made. It's constantly checking the quality of the water. If it's not happy with the quality of this water, it's not going to put it in your tanks. It'll divert it overboard with the brine discharge, all 10 gallons. Okay. Until it says I'm happy, then it diverts it over to your freshwater tanks. Okay. World Health Organization says anything under 1,000 parts per million is acceptable water. We have a lower threshold of 750 parts per million cutoff. Right. Okay. We want to see under 500. Anything under 500, the Watermaker industry considers that good water. Yeah. We should offshore see between 300 or 400 on a new system. Okay. It gets up to 750, the system's going to shut down and say high salinity. Okay, and we do that because, like I said, 1,000 is our limit. So if you're somewhere, say, anywhere, and say, hey, I'm starting to get high salinity, I can get you into the program and change that cutoff up to that 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
You may go another 6 months to a year. This way it gets you to another port, so you can get a new membrane or fix whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
There's a lot of workarounds in a Spectra. That's one of the things I really like. And that's one of them. This is like an early warning detection system for you for what's going on with the membrane.
How often do we change those
That's
filters?
a good question. This system will tell you when to change them.
All right.
But if you're using it like you will be, because you'll be living aboard, or you're using it every other day, every third day, you'll probably on average change them at every 30 to 45 days. In nice clear water. The other, like I said, there's a lot of workarounds in here. If sensors fail, salinity probe fails, flow testers fail, we can get in the program and take those offline, and Watermaker keeps working. Okay, so you're not out of Watermaker. The ultimate would be we take a lightning strike on the boat, God forbid. Here in Florida, we see it all the time. Lightning strike capital of the world is right here. And we do a lot of lightning strikes. And it takes out all the electronics in the boat, and it takes out the electronics on the Watermaker as well. But that doesn't put us out of commission. Okay, we have this toggle switch right here. And there's a 3-position. Okay, it's right pointing straight out. It's a 3-way switch. So that means it says auto run, which means it's in the automated position.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all going to operate off the electronics. If we lose our electronics, that's no good. If you see it says run man.
Yeah.
If I flip that over to run man, the system slowly ramps up. You might be able to hear it.
Yeah.
What we're doing, flipping that switch to run man, we're sending 12 volts directly to the motor. She runs. The system works mechanically. What happens when the system's operating mechanically, or electronically? If you see this little button down there with my thumb's on, can you see that little gray button?
Yeah,
Put your finger on that and see if you can feel it springy, pushing it up and down.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's the diversion valve for your fresh water, product water being made. When it's happy with the water, it sends 12 volts to that little coil. That coil opens up, sends the water to your tank. Okay, of course, we have no electronics, so there's nothing opening that. So as soon as you start that up, let it run for about 5 minutes. Any water that's being made is going to go overboard to the brine discharge.
Yeah.
Okay, now we want it to go to our tanks because we say, well, the water's good. You take and push that gray button down, and you turn it to clockwise just a bit, and that'll lock it down.
Okay.
And now that'll divert the water to your tanks.
So yeah, I mean, I've heard about people towing the filters behind the boat to clean them out. So is this good or bad?
And again, I used to say the same thing. It was a good idea until I stopped and used a little bit of common sense. Like I said, these are a barrier filter. It's the filter, the way it's designed, the water flows from the outside in this direction, and the filtered water comes out through the hole. So you put a safety line or a line through here with a safety knot on the back, and you drag it behind your boat. All the water is being, even though we are washing the surface of this, we're also shoving water right through here, and it's going to act like a filter. And what's ever going in here is going to be filtered on the inside of these pleated pleats. And then when you put it back in your Watermaker, everything that's on the inside is going to come right out, right into your Watermaker. The incident I had one time, put a brand new Watermaker in a customer's boat, real nice fella, and he was sailing around the world. He was heading out from here to Australia. And I told him to do that. 4 weeks later, I get this call, his Watermaker's not working. And make a long story short, we ended up changing 3 membranes on his Watermaker, which is extremely, if ever heard of, rare. And we couldn't figure out for the life of us what was going on. And we finally figured it out. To make a long story short, he was dragging this behind the boat, and a small flying fish got in there. Just emulsified in this filter, and it just spread scales and fish guts everywhere, membranes, parts, and everything like that. And once we figured out and cleaned the whole system out, he was back up and running again. So no more dragging them behind your boats. All you need to do is rinse them off with a little bit of fresh water, or even a wash down pump that has salt water. And the same amount of pressure comes out of your shower head. That's all you use. No scrubbing and no bleaching. And these filters that we sell, like I say, get 2 to 3 uses out of one of these.
Great.
All right.
Excellent. Thanks for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
All the paperwork for all the devices are in a
your drive?
in a folder that Leopard.
Putting them in the right order here does. Okay. But no, you're right. It's not directional. Charcoal filter you might want to crank on just a little bit because it's under constant pressure. This is what you normally would see. Okay, these fingers to work in there. There we go. Calibrate sensors. First one. Just hit calibrate sensors. We always want to do filter condition first. So what's going to happen, it'll automatically run. And the system calibrates itself.
Right.
It just have to go through this little system. So we want to go 1 gallon. How long does it take to make 1 gallon? Okay, it takes 3 minutes and 33 seconds. And now we proceed. Calibration successful. Okay. Now we go back. It'll ask us to save. Save, obviously. Okay, I'm going to give it a quick freshwater flush because it hasn't flushed, but just for a moment. We don't need to let it go through the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to operate the Watermaker, so I'm going to have you do it, or you want me to do it the first time so you can film it?
You tell me.
Okay, you press the start button. Okay, you want to go, I'm going to get rid of the fill tank eventually, but you want to go to auto run. Okay, and we don't want gallons, we want hours, so press the hours. So it's going to run for 1 hour.
Okay.
This is where you can program it to run for up to 12 hours. All right, so that'll run for an hour, so hit okay. Okay, system is starting. Now what's happening, it's injecting that fresh water. So if you changed your filters out, it's kind of purging most of the air out of the system. And it'll do that every time it starts. Boom, there's your 3 windows. This is the number we're looking for. This is our parts per million. It'll be high right now until the pressure starts building up, and it'll start dropping. Here's your filter condition at 100%.
Yeah.
Good. And this is your feed pressure. That's that white box, the feed pump module. I said you'll see things between normally offshore 90 to 120 psi. Right now it's low because the water is very fresh. Now also you see this parts per minute coming way down where it should. This little X right here means the fresh water being made is going overboard. Okay. It's just giving it a chance to check it for a few moments. There, boom. See the X disappeared? And see the little raindrops up there? That means the water now is going to your tanks.
Okay.
That's a high or low operation. So if I press that, it'll go to low and the speed will shift down.
Production.
Right. You'll make about half, not about 2/3 or to half of production, but it's much more energy efficient. You got dismasted offshore, lost your solar energy. And you say, look, I know I got 50, 60 amps left in my battery bank. I can run my Watermaker. And you run it on the low mode so we don't tank it too quick. So everything's looking extremely good. Like I said, I was getting 20 on my meter. We're right at 19. What you want to do is press this back button. That'll give you the real window. 18 psi. Your feed pump pressure is 74. That's the rest of you'll normally see it, 90 to 120. Your product quality is 20 parts per million. It's going to constantly change. Water temperature, it's kind of cool out there. That's good. Voltage is excellent, 13.2 at the Watermaker. Not at your panel, but at the Watermaker. So your batteries are screaming. Filter condition 100%. You're making water.
Do you know what the amperage is that
this is about 17 to 18 amp hours.
Amperes,
run this one. So so 17, 18 amps an hour if you want. So that's closest competitor is about 3 times that.
Is that right?
The same hour. Oh yeah. These are hugely energy efficient. So yes, in a boat like this, do you have solar on board?
How
many watts?
Lots.
Lots. Okay, that's a good number. Lots. I like that one.
I was told it was like 1,500.
Oh wow, that's lots. That's a lot of power. 1,000 watts today on a boat this size is a good amount. You got 1,500. So in theory, then 1,500 watts, you can run 5 of these Watermakers off that alone. The nice thing about it gives you 4 ways to power this Watermaker with a 12-volt system. Just run it; it'll take 18 amp hours off your battery. So if you run it for 2 hours, it's 36 amps basically, and 30 gallons of water. Okay, so we're gonna hit stop. And now it's going to go right into a freshwater flush. I hit stop purposely because otherwise it'd have to run for an hour. But if it ran for the hour, she'd do exactly what it did. Just stop and auto flush right now. You're doing good. That's nice. And that flush is just going to go like that for 5 minutes. Put the 2 gallons of propylene glycol in it. Set it right where I had mine set. Quick disconnect fitting here. Okay, there's another quick disconnect fitting right down here. You see they have the 2 quick disconnect fittings. So just 2 3-foot, 4-foot pieces of hoses. Okay, you'll plug that right in there and you'll have the 2 open ends and drop it right in the bucket, the open ends of the bucket. This is your intake line. So when you open the pressure relief valve and you start it, it's going to suck the pickling solution up into this line, circulate it throughout the entire Watermaker, filters, feed pump, Clark pump, membrane. When it's all done that, it comes out the brine discharge and right back into the bucket again.
Okay.
And we're just going to let it circulate like that for about 20 minutes.
Like 20 minutes.
When that's done, shut it all off, reconnect all the hoses back to where they belong, and you're done.
Okay.
But it will be with the pressure relief valve open.
Okay.
Because you don't want to pickle or unpickle it with it under pressure. When you get to the point you're going to pickle it, that's when my phone will ring. Okay? And I'll remind you. This is not a complicated system. It's really, there's beauty and simplicity. People look at these things and that's all there is. Well, it took us 20 years and millions of dollars to get to. That's all there is. So there's beauty and simplicity, and the whole concept, again, like I said, is that you can do most of the repairs yourself at sea.
Yeah.
Turn the power off when you pickle it. When you turn the power back on, it's going to assume, well, I don't know if I've been off for a minute or a year, so I'm assuming it's been pickled, and it's going to tell you, has the system been stored? You're going to say yes, and then it will go through its own unpickling process. It will tell you right on the control panel. We're flushing open pressure relief valve, flushing for 20 minutes, purging storage solution. It'll shut down. It'll go in an alarm. It'll say close the pressure relief valve, which will do. And then it'll run again for 10 minutes, purging the product water side. Then she'll kick right in, start making water, and she'll be right back in business. It will walk you through it.
Okay, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much. We appreciate being a customer.
I'm all up in that love haze, so where do we go now? Just let me know that I am safe.
If you have liked this episode, hit the like button, subscribe for free, and ding the dong so you don't miss your fix of the next exciting episode. Love and health from the Barefoot Doctors.